and some other programs. And we have tried to kind of broaden the aperture at times and really get folks to think outside of the box in terms of what agencies they may be looking to deal with. But what we want to do here at the end is really open the aperture even more and leave you guys thinking about innovation in other ways, where there are other opportunities, where there are innovative and creative programs that other agencies are doing to help drive innovation, to help bring it into their needs or to their stakeholders. So in this session, we're going to talk about some of those other programs. Some of them are complementary to SBIR, some of them involve SBIR, some of them do not. But there's a lot of cool things going on out there where there may be opportunities for you all that you otherwise might not have thought about. And so I'm going to introduce our panel here, and then I'm going to turn it over to them. I'm going to let each one of them speak and talk about some of the things they are doing that they have going on. And then at the end, we'll take Q&A at the end. So our first panelist is Lieutenant Zoe Castile, who's the program manager. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Meg. Our first panelist is Lieutenant Zoe Castile, who's the program manager for accelerator programs within the Air Force Research Laboratory. She'll be followed by Rachel Cheatham, the regional director for MD5, the National Security Technology Accelerator. Then we have Richard Adams, who's the director of the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Center at the Department of Energy's National Renewable Energy Lab, NREL. And finally, we have Ellen Ryan, who's the Deputy Division Chief for the Public Safety Communications Research Division at NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So with that, I'll turn it over to our panelists. Thank you very much.
Hello. I'm going to move this down a little bit since I'm a lot shorter than Art. Okay, so as Art said, I'm Second Lieutenant Zoe Castile. I'm kind of going incognito today so that you guys, so you'll know who I am now whenever you see me at the end of the day. But I'm really excited to talk to you guys about kind of the innovative programs happening within the Air Force, specifically within the Air Force Research Lab Space Vehicles Directorate. So I'm located at Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we've kind of, with the help of an organization called AFWorks, have started to pilot all these new programs to reach commercial in a different way than we ever have before. And so part of those programs are going to involve Air Force special topics in the SBIR program, as well as accelerators, hackathons, design sprints, everything like that. And I'm sure half of you have probably heard of some of them, and lots of you haven't heard of any of them. So I'm really excited to let you know these opportunities, and a lot of them are upcoming, so you can constantly be reaching out and looking for them and apply to these programs to be able to work more one-on-one with the Air Force with end users to actually get your technology from an idea or concept to an end user within the DoD. And so the reason we're running these programs, it's no secret that we're sometimes really bad at developing things quickly, right? So even within the SBIR program, as SBIR companies, you guys could create something in a phase 1, which might take a year, and then you can spend another 2 years on a phase 2, and then extend that an extra 5 years on a phase 3 to finally come up with an end technology that now for us has become irrelevant as the government, because it's been 8 to 15 years after we derived that initial requirement based on a capability gap that we had. And that's just not acceptable anymore. Commercial is outpacing the Air Force daily in what they're doing and how rapidly they're able to produce technology. And we realize that, and so we're coming up with these programs to change how that works. And so one of them is the Space Technology Accelerator, and that's run out of the Space Vehicles Directorate. And so we focus specifically on space technology within this program. We've run a couple of cohorts. Our first one was over SSA. We've run terrestrial weather, and now we're in our P&T cohort. So that's position, navigation, and timing. And these are traditionally 3-month part residential programs that bring in about 8 to 10 commercial companies. We focus on startups, kind of early stage small businesses. And so we validate that, yes, you have a technology and commercial wants to pull it. So we introduce you to commercial partners. We kind of do biz dev type of stuff, as well as saying, does your technology also have a military utility? And so we bring in hundreds of Air Force, Army, Navy end users to talk with you about your technology and say, hey, is this something that you would use? And they can pick it up and they can feel it if you have that. And say, yeah, this is exactly how we would use it, or no, we would like to tweak it like this. And it gives you all the feedback that you need from the DoD, as well as connects our end users with an actual technology. So coming forth from that program, you know who your end user is in the government, and we help work with them in a contracting method to give you, for that end user to be able to purchase your technology. So that's our Space Accelerator program. We're beginning to run just within the Space Vehicles Directorate 5 a year. We have 3 current nodes, and that will be in Colorado Springs, Albuquerque, and Los Angeles. And so there's also an organization called AFWorks, which some of you might be familiar with. They run technology accelerators, as well as the Human Performance Wing is running accelerators, and some people in the lab out of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So really, within the Air Force, you should start seeing spring up about 8 to 10 accelerators a year. And you're very much welcome to look on the website. I think AFWorks has most of them on their website, and that's AFWERX, so it's a little bit confusing. But you can see those, and you can apply to those programs based on whatever topic your technology falls into. So I talked a little bit about our current P&T program, and the really cool thing about this program and what makes it different is that we've run it through the SBIR process. So the Air Force, in collaboration, the Small Business Office, AFRL, the Space Vehicles Directorate, and AFWorks has created these special topics within the SBIR cycle. So 18.2, I believe, was the first cycle that had these special topics. And these special topics shortened, so you know that long timeline that I talked about at the beginning? These special topics are an attempt to shorten that timeline. And so we have a phase 1 that's 3 months, period of performance. So you only have 2 months of technical and 1 month of reporting. And then your follow-on phase 2, I believe, is a 15-month effort, as opposed to like 24 or 27-month effort that's usually in your SBIR phase 2. And so we ran our P&T program through the SBIR special topics. And so each company, we have 8 running through our current program, is on an SBIR phase 1. And so they received $50K for this 3-month effort. And following that, since we've connected them with end users within the DoD throughout this program, they can go directly to an OTA, they can go direct to a phase 2, direct to phase 3. We're trying to utilize all of these different options so that we can help you all in your growing pains with working with the government, as well as get the technology that we need quicker so that we can fulfill the capability gaps of today with today's technology, instead of fulfilling the capability gaps of today with technology from 12 years ago. So that's a little bit about what we're doing. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Even if your technology doesn't have to do with space, I can try to direct you to the right person. And I encourage you to look out on the Catalyst Campus website, the AFWorks website. Just look up AFRL Space Accelerator and see what our upcoming topics are, and please apply, because we'd love to talk to you and we'd love to see what commercial is doing in these different areas. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. So as Art said, my name is Rachel Cheatham, and I am a little bit taller than Zoe. All right. The regional director for an organization called MD5. So much like Zoe, the organization that I work for exists to find and source technologies that are applicable to warfighter needs. So, okay, so a couple of important things to know about MD5. We sit under research and engineering under the Undersecretary of Defense. So we are funded by Congress. And kind of an easy way to understand how we work is if you think about an industry association, the military is largely the customers or the companies that we would consider as if we were an industry association. So we put on programming, we help solve some of the bigger problems that the military faces. We put on events that allow for collaboration with outside communities and also offer things like training and ways to enhance the skill set of the military. So MD5 exists to serve the military. We exist to help solve some of DoD's biggest problems. The way that we do that is by leveraging various and unrelated communities like the venture community and the academic community to get fresh eyes on some of the big problems of DoD. And the way that we do that is through a suite of programming and putting on events that allow for the collision of these communities so that the outcomes and the solutions are better. So one of the, so we have 3 portfolios: education, collaboration, and acceleration. So I'm going to touch on a couple of different programs in these 2, but first I wanted to ask the audience, how many people in here are entrepreneurs? Awesome, okay. How many have been in business 12 months or less? Okay, and how many 12 months to 5 years? And 5 years to 10 years and beyond. Okay, so we've got a pretty good group of individuals who are experienced and also people who are really looking to enter into the market. So MD5, in our portfolio and in our programming, we have a Startup Innovation Fellowship. So the fellowship is an opportunity for service members to spend 6 weeks within a startup organization, and we work really hard to ensure that the fellow and the organization have at least a tangential or similar operational functions within the job of the service member in the area that the startup is in. And so what that creates is an opportunity for service members to see how industry operates. And it also creates an opportunity for businesses to host a service member, create that relationship, and as that individual goes back into their job, they become an advocate for life, basically, for that company and the capabilities of that company. So it allows for a little bit of a knowledge exchange and an experience for both the company and the individual. So that's an important program that we have in education, and I encourage anybody who is interested in being a part of that. It's basically a fellow, so it's free labor and a number of other benefits. In our collaboration portfolio, we host events called hackathons, and I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with hackathons, but the idea is that we take a problem from the military and we bring together a community for 36 hours and they work on a solution. So we just hosted a hackathon in Austin, sponsored by Army Futures Command, and the problem set was around counter-UAS mitigation and detection. We had 160 hackers, 17 teams, 5 solutions that were briefed out to the commander, and 3 solutions right now that have been put into our acceleration portfolio because the end customer was so impressed with them and basically wanted them as soon as humanly possible. So when you think about MD5, another thing to really consider and understand is that it is our job to go in and work with the men and women in uniform to understand their problems. So I have the lovely honor of being the regional director for the Rocky Mountains, and so I get to basically work with the men and women in uniform here in Colorado and 5 other states to really become familiar with their problems. So that's one of the values that MD5 has, is that we understand and know what that customer is looking for and what they need. What we are not doing is going out and tech scouting, pulling technology and then bring it back to them and saying, okay, use this, figure out a way to use it. What we have are the problems, and I know that there's been a lot of discussion about ways to come to market and that valley of death. And the idea here is that we know what the customers are actually looking for, and you all have the solutions for them. So it's just a matter of being a part of one of the events or meeting the right person within that military unit that can say, okay, I really like your solution, let's figure out a way to move forward. And that's really where MD5 comes in. So we start with the military problem. Our acceleration portfolio is probably going to be the most interesting for the group in this room for a number of reasons. Obviously, because it is, it's designed to help solve the problem, but also take that solution, put some meat around it, and get it into a place where it can be commercializable and actually bring it to market. So a couple of the programs that we have. So we have programs and services within acceleration. And I'll kind of go through them quickly. Hatch is an incubator program. So this is really early stage companies. And we are partnered with Founders Institute. So we have 10 slots at Founders Institute. And when we find a technology and a military customer and a military problem that technology solves, we can put it into a Founders Institute so that the idea really kind of gets a little bit of meat on it. We pay for the Founders Institute has a participation fee. MD5 pays for that, and the idea is that if you're working on a warfighter solution, we want to make sure that it has a business plan, it has a marketing plan, and it's a dual-use technology, because that's really important when we're looking at the sustainability of the companies that we're working with. So we also have a program called Propel. Propel is basically middle stage companies that are looking to go into an acceleration, program. So we actually partner with Techstars on one of the iterations, and our current, cohort that we're kind of calling out to companies and asking companies to apply is a partnership with AFWorks, with Techstars, and with MD5. So we're looking for companies that are working on UAS, detection, tracking, ID, and mitigation, immersive training using AR, VR, adult learning, and gamification, and data-enabled recruiting, training, and education. So if your companies are working in these areas and you're interested in learning about what military customers are also interested in these areas, then Techstars, this program is probably a really unique opportunity for you. And I strongly suggest that you take a look at it and apply and talk to me afterwards. I can link you up with where you can get more information. But the idea behind Propel is that we're really looking to solve the military problems, and we're looking at making sure that the companies that we're engaging with are looking at those same problems and looking to solve them as well. Launch is basically a tech transfer program, so I'm excited to chat with our other two speakers, because this looks at technology and research that's coming out of federal labs. And what we do at MD5 is we build a team around this program to look at the technology and see if it's actually commercializable or not. So it's a cohort program, it's 8 weeks, and we bring together basically individuals who are more interested in the business side. They work with the PI and determine whether or not it's a technology that could be brought to market. The idea is that team would then form a company and bring that to a warfighter need. So we specifically seek out technologies that are serving a warfighter need that we've heard, or we've heard the demand signal coming from our customers. STARTS is a showcase event. We actually hosted a STARTS program here in Denver in October. The 5 companies that won out of, I think we had 38 companies apply, we selected 5 to present to a room full of military. And every single one of those companies came to us and said, we've already made contacts, we've already had meetings, and we are, at least 3 of them are well on our way to contracting with the military for our particular solution or for our particular technology. So the STARTS program is a great opportunity to showcase what it is that you're doing, so that the DoD has an understanding of the innovation and the technology that's coming out of the private sector, because that's not always the case. And I think that that's really important to understand and know as well. So the drivers of innovation are sitting in this room, and the DoD is largely a consumer of that innovation. I mean, they have their DARPAs in areas where they're driving innovation, but in reality, it's coming out of the people in this room who are starting companies and working to solve some big problems. Our services maker is design and prototyping. So if you have something that is serving a warfighter need and you need some design and prototyping, we actually pay for that service to get you into the facilities and the resources that we have throughout the entire country. Same with Gauge. It's a little bit later stage, so this is more testing and evaluation of prototypes that are being developed. Boost is our SBIR and Rapid Innovation Fund program. So this is where we are collaborating with AFWorks and the Air Force. And just to build on what Zoe was saying, they are doing some really awesome work to get their processes streamlined and to get quicker turnarounds on some of the stuff that they're looking at. So we've actually partnered with them, and we've got a couple of special topics out in 19.1, I think it is. And these special topics are interesting because they're pretty broad. And so we want to see what kind of companies are coming out and proposing big ideas that maybe nobody's looking at right now, but we kind of try to keep that general. And then lastly, we have a program called Bridge, and it's just another way to support the companies that we are trying to support in our acceleration portfolio, and get them in with individuals who can help them with contracting, who can help them with marketing, and building that business model. So that is MD5 in a nutshell, and I will turn it over.
All right. So I don't have any slides, so maybe I'll just advance this to the next one, and should have brought my glasses with me. So we're going to switch gears here in a couple of ways. We're going to switch agencies, and we're going to switch spaces in terms of moving from the military space to the energy space. So I'm Richard Adams. I'm the director of the Innovation Entrepreneurship Center at NREL. We're about 35 minutes down the road from here along I-70. So for those of you that are from Colorado, you probably have some familiarity with us. For those of you that don't, I was going to kind of give a little bit of an overview of the lab, and then drill down into some of the programs that we have that support the entrepreneurial community. So NREL is based out in Golden, so we're close to the mountains from here. We've about $400 million a year budget from the Department of Energy, although we are what's called a GOCO. So we're a government-owned, contractor-operated organization. So even though the land that we have, the equipment, the facilities, our computers, our phones, etc., are all federally owned, we're all employees of a contractor that operates the lab on behalf of the Department of Energy. And that's actually probably one of the reasons why I'm here today, that 10 years ago when that transition took place between our former contractors and the current contractors, we were asked to do a number of things that have led to my organization as it stands today and the work that we currently do. So out at the lab, we have probably 2,300 employees. We have two campuses. One is the one in Golden, and then those of you that are familiar, we have the National Wind Technology Center just outside of Boulder, which is about 35 minutes north or 35 miles north of NREL, where we test our turbines and our blades, and there's a lot of hydrogen research that gets done up there as well. The lab was 40 years old last year, and we started out life as the Solar Energy Research Institute in the 70s, and then subsequently became a national lab. So as the name suggests, we've got a deep history in solar as well as the other generation assets, wind, biofuels, geothermal, hydrogen, and so on. And then as the lab's evolved over the years, we've moved into other areas like buildings, energy efficiency, advanced transportation, storage, and then our most recent efforts in terms of new research have been really around this whole concept of energy integration. So how do you take all of those non-traditional and traditional assets and make them all work together in a way that makes sense for the energy system of the future? So we've actually, our newest lab at NREL that houses our supercomputer is where most of that work's being done at the moment, and that's probably one of the areas that we'll continue to have a strong focus on in the future, not just in terms of controls and things like that, but also in terms of cybersecurity, grid resilience, and so on and so forth. We, like most organizations, also have a tech transfer group, but the organization that I work for is a little bit different. And for those of you that are familiar with the National Lab System, our organization is really quite different. So NREL's, so there are 17 national labs around the country. NREL's different in a couple of ways. One is we're the only single mission lab amongst all of the other national labs. in that our sole focus is on the renewable energy and new energy space. And then secondly, we're an applied lab. So there aren't that many applied labs. Most of the labs, if you are familiar with them, are really basic sciences labs. So they've got very long-term sorts of research goals and research objectives, whereas we tend to be a lot closer to the market. And again, that's sort of one of the reasons why we have an organization like mine. So as an applied lab, we like to be close to the market. We like to work with the various parties and players in the marketplace that can help guide our research and give us insights into where the needs exist in the marketplace. And so through that, we have a number of programs that we have to support that. So just as an example of how close we are to the market, we've got over 750 active partnerships with non-DOE clients around the world. So we have industry partners, we have small business partners, we have investor partners, we have obviously other federal agencies both here in the US and throughout the globe. We also work a lot with states, municipalities, so very, very broad breadth of customers that we work with. And I think as a national lab, there are sort of two messages that I'd like to leave you with today, if nothing else. One is we are open for business. So we are a resource that small businesses and startups like you guys that are involved in the energy space can get access to, and that is true of all national labs, although we think we do a pretty good job of trying to make that as easy as possible and facilitate that to be as easy for particularly startups that don't have a lot of resources. And then secondly, we are there, and like all of the people on the panel today, we're really dedicated to trying to help move whatever agency that we're working for or whatever sector that we're working in forward at a more quick rate than what is currently or what's historically been done. So let me just turn to the Innovation Entrepreneurship Center and start to tell you a little bit about our program. So we were formed about 10 years ago. The former director of my group had a long history of running a program here in Colorado called the NREL Industry Growth Forum, which takes place each May. It's essentially an investor competition for clean energy and clean tech startups. We get about 200 applicants a year for that program. And we use our investor base, which I'll talk about in just a moment, to help willow down those applications to essentially a top 30, and then that top 30 selection of companies are invited to come and present at the forum. During the forum, which goes for a day and a half, we run a speed dating session where investors have an opportunity to interact with companies, or entrepreneurs have an opportunity, more importantly, to invest, to interact with a very broad base of investors. This year we ran 850 meetings. So we know we're having a lot of influence in terms of getting people linked up to investors. But the reason for sort of telling that story and giving that history of doing that program for over 20 years is that it's led to a lot of other things. So it started with a very good base of knowledge of what was happening in the startup community. And it also started with a very good base of what was happening and good contacts amongst the investment community. And so as we've gone on, we've evolved our programs and offerings to try and address the gaps that exist in the ecosystem that you are all currently, I would say, mired in, but that's probably not fair. So currently engaged in. I'm a former investment banker and I'm a former entrepreneur, so I've lived and felt your pains, and so I can be very sympathetic to what you're all going through, which is probably why I can say mired as opposed to enthusiastically engaged. But suffice to say that through our programming and through our relationships, we started to identify where there were some true gaps that we thought we could fill as a national lab. And these hadn't really been thought about by national labs before. And so this whole notion of how do we better support startups came with a theory that I had about, could we provide more money for early stage entrepreneurs and moving that technology from kind of lab bench to prototype. And the more I thought about it and the more I worked with people out in the marketplace, the more we sort of came to the realization that it wasn't a money problem. it was a lack of capability problem. Or a lack of capacity problem. And so what we were finding as we went around and talked to people was that there were more and more organizations that were giving us the feedback that they just weren't getting the attention of the investment community. And you can see that detailed in the investment charts that come out on a pretty regular basis. And so rather than just put another fund together, what we decided we'd do is we try and address the problem by making the facilities of a place like NREL, so a national lab with enormous capabilities, enormous facilities, and masses of equipment, most of which startups actually can't afford to buy, make those available to people in order to speed up their path to market. And so we addressed two real problems. One was, could we find really interesting, good technologies that were being ignored by the investment community? So that was the first problem. And then secondly, could we de-risk those technologies and speed up their path to market in such a way that at the end of it, or at the end of a program, they'd be more readily investable? And so in 2014, we partnered with Wells Fargo. They funded the $10 million pilot at the lab. And we built this program as we started to bring companies into the program. So we sort of still talk today about flying the plane as we were trying to build the program, which was pretty interesting. But suffice to say, it's been a huge success. We've now got 25 companies in the portfolio. We just took on 5 companies, another 5 companies in October. Of the first 20 companies that went into our portfolio, they've now raised over $120 million. They have had enormous success in terms of penetrating the market. And so we believe that we're starting this trend towards an acknowledgement that programs like ours and others that exist around the country are a way for investors to get access to very good technologies without having to go through a lot of the technical due diligence or technical development that they would otherwise be subject to. The program today is now a $30 million program. We are just moving into the agricultural space, so we, in the first quarter of next year, we'll be doing a first round of ag, and then we'll be following that with new sectors including sustainable mobility or transportation and residential. And so this program will continue to roll on as we move forward. We also just announced this year a new partnership with Shell, the Shell Game Changer program, and we are partnering with them on a multi-year, multi-million-dollar program, essentially to do the same sort of technology incubation as we've been doing for our partners at Wells Fargo. With the Wells Fargo program, we've initially focused on the commercial building space, and as I said, we're moving into these new areas. With Shell, the focuses are battery, so battery longevity, battery life, battery durability, and advanced controls for the smart grid, and then we'll be evolving into some other areas as well. As we look at this space where we think we can do technology incubation, we see 5 really key areas where we can sort of subdivide into other areas about areas where we can do more of this sort of programming. So the 5 key areas are the generation assets, that I mentioned earlier, wind, biofuels, solar, etc. Advanced mobility is all forms of transportation, but think beyond the vehicles that you may or may not have come to this event in, and think more broadly about transportation in general and just how you physically move people around, especially as they migrate more towards cities. Then we've got the food, energy, water nexus. You have buildings, which we're already working in, but one of the other areas within buildings that we want to address is things like data centers. And then you've got the whole notion around energy integration. And what we're building towards is this idea of a smart city or a smart community. So as we think about how do we build this program out further, what we're trying to do is address the challenges of making individual technologies work with one another, either inside a building or somewhere else, maybe inside a vehicle. But then how do you make those technologies work with other technologies within that environment? And then how do you make one building work together with another building? And then how do you scale it up to a community scale? And then as you think more and more about this, how do you then make the transportation system work for the people and where they're living and where they're working and so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, it's got to be a system of systems that accommodates and provides comfort and security for all of us as individuals, or it will never work. And so that's really what we're trying to build towards, both with the Wells Fargo program as well as the Shell program. So just a couple of logistics before I finish up. So our programs can take anything from very early stage all the way through to commercially ready companies, and we've done all of those so far. So we tier the way we think about a company. So tier 1 is still in the lab or still in the entrepreneur's garage. Tier 2 is a prototype. Tier 3 is what we call commercially ready. And we can advance companies that we take in tier 1 or tier 2 through each of those tiers to get them to a point where they are deployable and, more importantly, investable. So one of the things that makes the program unique is that we've actually partnered with people like Wells and Shell for specific reasons. They represent a first end-use customer, so it's your first opportunity to actually interact with a customer and get a sense of what it takes to get a contract with a bank or get a contract with an organization like Shell. But more importantly, we take your technology and we test it and deploy it out in the field so that as that first customer, they can see it's actually working within their facilities or within their operating environment. And we think that's a pretty critical piece of not just de-risking the technology, but also helping to de-risk the market. And again, the feedback we've had suggests that that is definitely the case. So that was one point I just wanted to make about logistics. The other is that these are invitation-only programs. So we have a network of about 50 channel partners around the country that include accelerators, incubators, and universities that we partner with to provide us recommendations on which companies we should be looking at to put into these programs. And we did that for a couple of reasons. One was to avoid the dreaded open call and just the logistics of trying to go through 3,000 responses to an open call. We wanted to be fair and we wanted to make this a bit more of a personalized program. Someone the other day described it as white glove, which I didn't quite get, but I can kind of see where they're going. And then we also do a lot to support those channel partners to help with the ecosystem more generally. So we actually, in addition to the programs we're running, what we're trying to do is build out their capabilities so that they can provide more support and more opportunity for startups like you. Just a couple of other things about my organization, just to sort of round out the thought process. We run an investor advisory board. We have over 50 partners on that investor advisory board made up of active investors in the space, everything from venture capitalists all the way through to corporates and family offices. And we're very actively engaged with them, so we're in a good position to be able to make introductions for people to investors, to the right investors at the right time for the right reasons is what we talk about. And then we also run some programs on behalf of Department of Energy, one of which has been, well, two really, which is probably relevant to the people here. One's called Incubate Energy, which is a platform of incubators that are operating in this space. The other is a program called Energy I-Core, which is our take on the I-Core program that NIH runs, where we're basically taking researchers inside the labs and training them to think more entrepreneurially using the lean startup models in the Startup Bootcamp. So happy to answer any questions that you might have, and I will pass over to our last speaker. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ellen Ryan, and like Art said before, I'm the Deputy Division Chief of the Public Safety Communication Research Program out of NIST. And before I start, I just would like to thank the organizers and our wonderful hosts of this fantastic conference. This has really been an eye-opening experience for me, and I hope this is going to be a long-lasting relationship. Not only with the PSCR program, but I really want to take a lot of the lessons learned back to NIST. So again, thank you for inviting us and for me to be on the panel. Come on. Should be a little more on that. There we go. Okay, now I got it. So before I start, I want to give you a little bit of history. I don't know how much people here really have worked with NIST or in the area of public safety. So I'm going to start with a little bit of boring history, but I promise to keep it very brief. And then I'd like to really just go into who we are, what we do, how we do it, and what I really want to talk about is our new program that we're launching, which is our Open Innovation Program, where we really focus on prize challenges. So way back in history, back in 2012, the Middle Class Tax and Relief and Job Creation Act was passed by Congress. And as a result, NIST was funded $300 million to help build out the first public safety nationwide broadband network. We're really doing the forward-looking research on behalf of FirstNet, that's the government entity whose mission it is to partner with AT&T to create that network. But we're really working on behalf of all of public safety, all of first responders, really trying to address those technological gaps in the areas of telecommunications, primarily broadband, but we're also looking at other types of telecommunications as well. So we work very closely with public safety, and they help us to identify and address their exact needs. Our work is very focused, and I'll talk a little bit when I get into some of the examples of the prize challenges that we're running. I'll talk a little bit more about the research portfolios and what areas we are trying to address. So how do we do our work? We really have a three-pronged approach to our research. We have a multi-million-dollar LTE network lab within NIST. We have about 40 research engineers, primarily from the telecom industry, who have come in to help us do the research internally. We have a very active grants program. I think to date we've awarded about $50 million in grants. Our goal is to award another $50 million throughout our grant program. And our newest research area is launching our Open Innovation or our Prize Challenge. And again, we're hoping that that'll be another $100 million program on behalf of public safety. So when I talk about broadband networks, really what am I talking about? And what am I talking about when I talk about bridging the gaps of public safety and how we can bring broadband technology into the hands of first responders? So I have a question to ask. How many people here are carrying a broadband UE device? Nobody? How many people here are carrying a cell phone? You are all carrying a broadband UE device. Now, just think of all the features and functionalities that you have available to you because you have that cell phone. Now, it's not realistic to think that a firefighter who's already in 70 pounds of protective equipment, they have an air tank, they have a full face mask, and they have gloves, and they have all of their firefighting equipment. And they're going to walk into a burning building to save victims. They're not going to pull out their cell phone, and that cell phone is not going to help them navigate through that building and find that victim and get out using the shortest path. But what if we could develop that user interface that you have on your phone in a heads-up display? And via augmented reality, we could even add visual aids within that heads-up display that would help them navigate real-time through that building. And because the victim probably has a GPS device on them, their cell phone, it could help them locate that victim. And if there are sensors in the building, they can use sensors that would provide mapping to get them out of the building using the shortest path. So that's an example of the type of research and the type of gaps that we want to do development work in and work with companies like yours and other researchers to help resolve some of these issues for public safety. Now I'm just going to go a little bit into some of the prize challenges that we've already ran. The program is a little bit new. We started about 18 months ago. In 2018, we finished one of our prize challenges. It was the Virtual Reality Heads-Up Display Challenge. And this was really the use case that I just described was really what this prize challenge was about. Internally, we developed a VR environment, And then we had the participants using augmented reality. They developed heads-up displays with different types of visual aids that could help a firefighter navigate through a burning building. So we actually used a VR space. We created a burning building, and then we applied the heads-up displays within that burning building, and that was the challenge. It was a time challenge. How quickly could the judges, using the different heads-up displays, get through that burning building and back out? The prize purse, it was a multi-phase challenge. The prize purse wasn't quite $125, but it had the potential to be a $125,000 prize purse on that multi-phase prize challenge. I noticed, and I got a chance to talk to a couple of the companies here who are in the UAS or drone companies. We did have a UAS challenge that we had a live challenge this past May at an airfield out in Fredericksburg, Virginia. That again, it was a multi-phase challenge. And this one it was fun and it was very challenging. We didn't have any outright winner of the challenge. And so we're going to do another UAS challenge for all of you UAS companies out there. But one of the main hurdles for using UAS technology for first responders is the price point, and then also the payload versus flight time at a particular price point. We found really to be a use case that is a barrier for public safety. So I'll give you an example. Think of a volunteer fire department. I live up in Boulder. We have a lot of volunteer fire departments that cover some of the foothills between Boulder and Eldora Ski Resort, for example. It's a very hilly, very rugged, but there are a lot of homes in that area as well. But what if the volunteer fire department, for less than $20,000, could purchase a off-the-shelf drone, and all in, the drone, the fuel, the payload was less than 55 pounds. It could be disassembled by 2 firefighters. It could fit in the back of a pickup truck, and it could be deployed quickly with a vertical launch, and it could remain hovering for hours, carrying an entire LTE network that could provide service for up to 300 subscribers. A lot of the participants in our challenge thought that it was going to be easy. Nobody could do it. Nobody could carry a 20, 25-pound payload on a drone that was of that small size that they could build for less than $20,000. So it was a real lesson learned for everybody. I actually have a video of that challenge on my iPad. If anybody would like to see it after this, it was pretty neat. Again, that prize purse was up to $432,000. We weren't able to award that much money because just only one company came close to meeting all of our criteria. But again, these are just examples of some of the prize purse amounts and some of the type of research that we've been doing this past year. So a couple of our current and upcoming prize challenges. We just launched data analytics, so that's another area that we're doing research in. We just launched a data analytics challenge, the second phase of that challenge. This is a challenge where the participants are developing algorithms that can be used to extract personally sensitive data from first responder data sets, but leave enough data in those data sets that those data sets are still applicable for use by public safety. Now, this use case, of course, is for public safety, but think of all the other use cases for these types of algorithms. They could be used in healthcare, they could be used in lots of different industries. So that's another thing that we look at is how can some of the work that we do, how can it not only influence and help public safety, but how can those technologies also be used by other industries as well? We're in the process of building out our next year's funding opportunities, our grant program, not only our grant program, but also our Open Innovation and Prize Challenge program. So I've just kind of quickly listed, I can't talk in detail because we're still going through some of the procurement processes on our upcoming funding opportunities. But if you check out our website, and I'll make sure that you all have the last slide has our webpage on it, you can go in and check out some of the exciting areas that we have coming up in grants and prize challenges. We have a big codathon that we're putting together. It's going to be multi-year, multi-event, multi-city, multi-challenge, huge codathon. We're getting a lot of exciting co-sponsors, AT&T, Samsung, FirstNet, some others will be coming on board to, they've already come on board to co-sponsor that codathon with us. We're also doing some more data analytics. We're going to do another UAS challenge. We're looking at doing a haptic interface challenge. That's kind of a new area within our research. Similar, it's another type of user interface along with the heads-up display. What if a firefighter has on their first layer of their uniform against their skin, they have sensors, and those sensors are taking biometrics, their heart rate, their blood pressure, things like that, their body temperature. And through haptic feedback, that information could get back to a firefighter in a way that would not impede them visually and not distract them from the main focus of their job. So that's another challenge that we're in the process of designing. And that's really it. Does anybody, we're going to go right into questions, or Art, coming back up?
Yeah, no, I'd like to open it up to questions now that you've heard from all four of our panelists. We do have a microphone as in the past year, so.
Thank you to all of you guys. That was great presentations. It's awesome to see innovating the innovation process, which is what all of you are doing. So thank you for sharing. Rachel, I was specifically interested in how MD5 relates to the Defense Innovation Unit, or DIUX, within DoD, how you guys differentiate yourselves.
I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
Actually, that's a great question because we get it quite often. So we characterize our relationship with DIUX as kind of cousin relationship. They are looking at kind of the side that I had said that MD5 is not looking at. We are not going out and tech scouting. We're starting with the customer problem. DIUX, and they're a valuable piece of the ecosystem, they're going out and looking at what is actually going on within Silicon Valley and other areas that have a lot of startup activity going on. So they're looking at this from the technology standpoint. We're looking at it from the military problem standpoint.
So I guess my question is, I'm not standing up. It's been a long 2 days. What strikes me is that there's so much going on now. There's so many accelerators, there are so many incubators, there's so many programs. We all fit in a different way, and sometimes we are overlapping. Is there a need to knit this all together at some point and figure out how is this a conversation you're already having?
About this, yeah.
No, seriously, especially, I could see referring to your program if we find the right people. There's a way that this all can go together. Your thoughts?
So I'll start if that's okay. And I was already taking notes as you all were talking about ways that we could transfer companies that come out of our accelerator and maybe introduce them to you guys if they have something of use to you. And I can't speak for the entire Air Force, but personally, my mission is to merge these programs. I think they're, like you said, they're very much, they're innovative programs, but they're maybe focused on different stages of the tech development or looking at it from different ways. And so even Rachel and I have been in conversations of how we can do, joint programs, or how their program that they have can lead into one of our accelerator programs that can then lead into an incubation program somewhere else. And that you always talk about the, what's it called? like the black hole basically between the phase one and actually finding an end user. I believe truly that the meshing of these programs is what will eventually be the easiest way for a company to come from their idea through their entire process and meeting the correct people to actually get their technology to an end user. So that's what everybody else says.
I agree that at some point, you know, we can look at this and say, are we overlapping? Are we doing things? But in the commercial industry, competition is a good thing, right? So we're not necessarily competing with each other, but we are offering different avenues to get to the same place. So I don't think it's a bad thing that we've got all of these different organizations that are working in similar areas. It's a positive thing for the ecosystem, and as long as we have some sort of collaborative relationship, I think that that's going to kind of raise all boats and all tides, however that one goes.
Sure. Yeah. You're right. This is an issue, and one thing that I recognized over the past couple of days, the research that we do, we're very much on the left end of the innovation pipeline, very much at the beginning of the research. What we expect out of our grantees, what we expect out of our prize participants, our winners, isn't a product. It's really getting down that maybe a prototype, maybe in our codathon when we're doing app development, maybe there'll be a minimum viable product, but we're really not looking at that end goal, that end, you know, productization. We're really far on that left end. And so one of the things that we're challenged with and that, you know, we talk about a lot is how do we help our grantees? How do we help our prize challenge winners really move down that innovation pipeline? And a lot of the programs that you all are working on, I think is really a part of that puzzle. But a lot of it also, like you said, it's the communication. How do I know if I have a grantee that could really help you out or help you out or help you out? Like, how do we keep that kind of umbrella communication open?
So our office is actually set up to address that specific problem, which is, you know, the continuity. I talk about the space we operate in, particularly within the energy sector, as being a continuum. It's everything from an idea in a researcher's head all the way through to a product in the ground or a product on the shelf. Our office is really all about trying to make sure that that continuum is addressed for a startup, so that they have a pathway to follow. It's by no means a linear pathway. And so the way that we approach doing that is by using the resources of the lab, which are pretty substantial, or more importantly, using the resources of our partners or some combination of both. And, you know, one of the nice things about being at an event like this one today is you can always find new partners. So like the others here, I'm excited to have a chat after this about, you know, what they're doing and how the things we're doing can potentially interact. But as we morph from, you know, our very early days, probably 10 years ago in this organizational structure, where there were some very clear gaps, we've reached a point now where there really aren't that many gaps anymore, if any. It's really now our role is to be able to know who's doing what, so that we can steer people towards the right sort of solution at the right time. And so we probably get 1,000 inquiries a year from startups and others about, you know, what should they do, who should they be partnering with. And so we're very conscious about, you know, not being in a position ever where we have to say, sorry, we don't know the answer to that. But if we don't know, we'll find the answer. But our preferred position is we actually know the answer. Like, we know who you could go and work with.
And the answer is always the SBDC, right? The answer is always the SBDC, right?
How do you do? I'm Peter Bond with Inertial Wave. This question is really for Lieutenant Castillo, but the PNT Accelerator Program, there's been a lot of advances in inertial sensors even in this last year, and we're moving faster and faster towards miniaturization of those. Do you see the PNT Accelerator Program or a follow-on to that or direct to phase 2s coming up in the near future?
So I will say it is too late for the P&D Accelerator. We've already chosen our companies and they're running through that program. But one thing that I have learned from just going throughout this topic area is that it's very broad, and there's a lot happening in the commercial sector, in the position navigation, timing, all aspects of that. And so it's definitely a topic that we're still looking at. In May, so we run, like I said, around 5 a year out of Space Vehicles Directorate. We're focusing on running all of our mission areas through these programs. And so I would say in the next 2 years, probably, we'll end up doing another PNT program, at least if I have anything to say for it. And so definitely look for that. But also, I don't know if this is like the kosher thing to say necessarily, but reach out to me with your technology. Because if it's something that's useful, I would love to connect you to an end user. And that's just something that we're also trying to be a door into the Air Force. So whether that's through one of the AFWERX special topics, just the open topics, is a good way into finding those end users. But also, if you just contact myself, I can get with people in the lab and see if that's something that would be of use to them. So I don't know if that fully answers your question. It will be a while before we see another PNT accelerator for sure. And inertial navigation is pretty important, especially the miniaturization of that technology. And it's something that is definitely still being figured out on our end as well. So we are interested.
Sorry about that. One other thing I just want to add on just a little bit is that the majority of our clients, which we see well over 6,000 clients a year with well over 16,000 attendees that come to our events a year, one of the biggest things that these pre-venture or growth companies that are coming to us is a confusion of what's the right fit for them. And I know we talked a little bit about that. Unless you have groups like this that are all getting together where businesses can actually see everybody, it's very confusing for them. And I guess my question is there a way or a central point they can learn about, you know, they may think that that's a good fit to go to your accelerator program, but really they should be in the incubator program, right? Is there a way for businesses to understand, to migrate what is going to be the best pathway for them first steps to then maybe graduate to go to another? Is there a central, central place, I don't know, a central like depository where we can, we can send a business to, because if they don't come to us where we can help them migrate, and we're not the be-all, end-all, we like to think we are, but PTAC and some of the other entities as well that can help, but if they don't come to us, the biggest issue we see is that businesses get very confused and they don't know where to go. So I guess my question is there some sort of depository that they can go to figure out what's a good fit for them?
The short answer to that is no, because we've tried to do it. It's really difficult to do. Part of the problem is it's so hard to keep the information up to date on an ongoing basis. So, you know, we think it's better if there's the general awareness out there in the marketplace amongst organizations like yours and ours and others, of, you know, go and have a conversation with this person and you know, have it at a personal level rather than, you know, trying to have a database that isn't going to solve that problem in my mind. Because even as an entrepreneur, speaking as a former entrepreneur, you spend a lot of cycle time trying to work out where you should be at the right time. And that can be very wasteful in terms of energy and resources. So, you know, we've taken a much more sort of hands-on personal approach to trying to do that to get people where they need to be.
We hear all the time, I'm too busy to do all that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, right, if you're an entrepreneur and you're working 80 hours a week anyway, you know, being able to say to someone, hey, where should I go, what should I do, rather than, you know, mucking around on a website.
Okay, so I have a couple questions here. The first one is for Zoe, and that is, are you guys, for 19.1, are you using Direct Phase 2 on any of your topics, or?
So I don't know. I probably shouldn't answer that question necessarily. Direct to Phase 2 is an option. and it's something that we would like to execute. But I am not the sole decider of who gets to go, what contracting method. So I can only speak to say that it's definitely something that we're looking at, but you also have policy and legal and contracting and those people that has to go through before it's executed.
Okay, I was just wondering if maybe it was too early since it just came back, just came back into effect, if you had, for 19-1, if you had time to even consider it for that, or if you were planning to consider it for later announcements.
So it's definitely been considered, and in my personal opinion, especially on the back end of one of our accelerators, the direct to phase 2 is the best option. You don't really need a phase 1 at that point. You need to send the company through a phase 2. And so it's something that we're looking at. As far as being able to execute it, I'm still unsure and probably shouldn't speak towards that.
My next question is for Rachel, and that was on your chart where you had the various breakout areas. Can a company move through those different areas? So they can participate in more than one of the areas, for example?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So,
Okay.
for example, we hosted the hackathon, and the 3 companies that were selected by the general officer are now part of our acceleration portfolio. So we are supporting them in their formation of the company that they're deciding that they are not going to form, and the 2 that are definitely forming are using the resources that we have within our acceleration portfolio. So yeah, the model is definitely to feed it, but we also support companies who don't necessarily come through our other programs. So if we're working with a company that is solving a warfighter need, then they can go right into the acceleration portfolio.
Okay. And then my last question, I think, is for Ellen, which was, how do you advertise your challenges? Do you put those on like FedBizOps or Grants.gov or?
We use the challenge.gov website, so all of our prize, so we follow the America Competes Act. So all of our prize challenges are launched through the challenge.gov website.
Okay, thanks. So,
And then we also, on the pscr.gov website, you can go out there and we have a lot of information about all of our research portfolios, all of our grant program, upcoming opportunities, and also for our prize challenge, the new prize challenges that we're getting ready to launch. We have information on our own website about those as well.
okay, thank you. So, all the points are well taken about how it's very challenging to help companies find all of these opportunities. And we always joke that, this is a high contact sport, trying to, constantly keep things up to date and constantly be aware of what's going on, but it's just really impossible, which is, I agree on both sides. We'd love to be able to help all the companies. I've been with the government 30 years, and I still get confused about what's going on with the government. So I can't imagine what the firms are going through, trying to go through every single agency and figure out what's going on. So, we try to help as much as possible, but I think just, these events and talking to each other is really going to continue to be the best way to get information and share it with everybody. So thank you all for your insight and time.
One more thing, and I know this is just kind of micro to our program. If you do go out to the pscr.gov website, you can sign up for our newsletter. We have a very active newsletter. It goes out at least once a month, and we do talk about all of our upcoming external funding opportunities. And I also want to just give another little pitch for the Prize Challenge program. Maybe you're not in a position with your company to be a participant in one of the prize challenges, but maybe you would like to join as a subject matter expert or part of a steering team, or maybe even a judge. And that would give you the opportunity, because maybe you're interested in the technology that's being showcased in the challenge, or maybe you want to be exposed to some of the up-and-coming talent coming out of the universities, some of the startup companies that do participate in our prize challenges. So there are other ways other than just being the participants of the prize challenge itself, but we would welcome any other leveraging your expertise as subject matter experts, being on steering committees, judges, things of that nature as well.
I just want to add two things off of Susan's questions that were all very good. First one, because I'm sure some of you guys had this question, no, NASA does not do direct to phase 2. And it's not because we wouldn't like to, it's because Congress hasn't told us we can. Congress only told 5 agencies, 3, so it's Ed, DOD, NIH. Yeah, so Ed, NIH, and all the DOD family can go direct to phase 2, but all the rest of us can't. So Congress decided to pick those 3, and we weren't one of them. So we can't go direct to phase 2. The other piece is NASA has been doing prize competitions probably for about 15 years, long time, through our Centennial Challenges program and through a robust set of open innovation online crowdsourcing activities. So for those folks that are interested in space-specific or aeronautics-specific prize competitions, that was really cool to hear about y'all's UAV or UAS challenge. That was awesome. There's another website, right, because we're all siloed, that's called Solve, or nasa.gov/solve, like work with NASA to solve a problem. So all the citizen science crowdsourcing prize activities for NASA are listed there, in addition to challenge.gov, which is really the one-stop shop for the entire federal government for all the prizes that have ever been run, which at this point is over 800 prizes that have been run in the last 7 years. So it's a pretty common vehicle that's being used by the federal government.
So if we don't have any more questions, I'm just going to leave with kind of an example or two of why I think folks really should look outside your normal box sometimes and look at some of these other opportunities where you might not think originally that there'd be interest or applicability. But Lee Mason, NASA's principal technologist for power and energy systems, he's come out to NREL and talked with their experts, because if you think about it, power systems on the moon, things like that, energy system integration is going to be key to making those things work, and there's a lot of expertise in places like NREL and things like that. On the haptic side, coming out of our iTech program, we had a company that was working on a physical feedback sensor that could be of use for an astronaut when they're suited up, give them feedback. The Air Force is actually very interested, because that's something that could be very valuable for an Air Force pilot. And I know one of those companies was not aware of what NIST was doing in this area, potentially for firefighters, and I pointed them in that direction. So you might not think that what you're working on would be applicable to one of these other areas, but it really could be. And what Zoe's doing with the accelerator, there's tremendous alignment with some of our PNT needs, and I'm really excited to talk more with Rachel about where we can find some crossover and areas to work together with MD5. So with that, please thank our panel. I really appreciate them rounding out the day for us. And thank you. Kelly, do you want to come up?